Hello, I'm Tonia Crawford and I'm a co-investigator on the Leave Nobody Behind project, which included a survey of informal carers of people with disability. With this survey, we explored what carers of people with disability did in regards to preparedness, what their capabilities were, and what supports they would need for during and after a disaster. For this study, informal carers were defined as those who provide unpaid care and support for people with disability, who may receive income support from the government and may also receive assistance from formal paid services. In our study, 55% of our respondents were parent carers, but we extend this definition to include other forms of carers such as spouses or partners, adult offspring, relatives or friends who also provide care. We used a mixed method design, which included a survey of informal carers and their care recipients and their demographic data. We asked about their disaster risk, as well as their self-reported capabilities, preparedness actions, and support needs in two scenarios. One was a shelter-in-place scenario and one related to evacuation. We had 61 respondents, 84% of who were female. Nearly half were mothers of the care recipient. We also included 7 in-depth interviews. The most recorded disability conditions related to physical disability, followed by chronic health conditions, and then intellectual disability. The carers reported that they were most confident dealing with heat waves and least confident dealing with bushfire. In terms of preparedness action, they reported most commonly preparing their property to reduce damage, and this related to clearing around the property, trimming trees, maintaining smoke alarms, as well as stockpiling emergency supplies such as food and drinking water, medications, generation of power with generators, having extra batteries, and as well as reviewing and updating insurance policies relating to property, vehicle, and life insurance. In terms of capability, carers really focused on maintaining independence, and it depended on the scenario. For the shelter in place, maintaining independence related to stockpiling of food, medications, and consumables, having power generation and batteries, and having access to family and friend support. For the evacuation scenario, it related to accessing physical and psychological assistance, mostly from those they knew, particularly in relation to transport to evacuation or centres or alternative accommodation, and as well as accessing how to get communication of what was going on. In relation to the assistance they would need, it focused mostly on physical and practical assistance. So with the shelter-in-place scenario, that related to food, water, utilities, power generation, as well as personal care assistance. With the evacuation scenario, that related more to the process of evacuation and accessing information. With the transport to evacuate, that was predominantly to evacuation centres as well as alternative accommodation, particularly with specialised equipment such as wheelchairs. They also reported needing psychosocial and emotional support to manage anxiety as well as to connect with others. Those who had lived experience talked about that the reality of evacuation sometimes meant that they were quite delayed in leaving and going to the centres. And this was mostly because of the accessibility or poor accessibility to the evacuation centre. So a number of recommendations has come out of this research. The advice to other carers was quite general in nature and focused on maintaining independence, and included things like having and communicating a plan, having a grab bag of essentials and medication, keeping your insurance up to date, having copies of important documents stored elsewhere. And advice to emergency services really focused on accessibility of emergency shelters. And this included accessibility to toilet facilities, having quiet places for people with disability, having families, carers and equipment together, but also that they be listened to and respected, and that there is an understanding that their needs are quite different from the general population. And so overall, our recommendations from this research is that informal carers and the perspectives of women be included in training of others, other carers and care networks, paid care services, councils, as well as emergency services. So I'd just like to thank our and acknowledge our partners in the support of this research. Thank you for listening.